Hey everybody, we're here for another episode of Open at Microsoft. My name's Kaleb Luedtke, and I'm here with Demitrius Nelon, where we go behind the scenes on Windows Package Manager with some frequently asked questions. Well, thanks for having me back, Demitrius. It's great to see all the new features that you've been shipping with Winget, the incredible amount of support from the community. What I really wanted to do today was turn the tables a little bit and ask you a few questions that we see frequently in the community, get your perspective on the product. Last time I was here, we talked about how, creating issues and bug reports is a great way the community can make a difference. And as part of that, we've seen a lot of questions. And the first one that comes to mind is, there's AppInstaller and Winget, and their versions aren't the same. Can you shed some light on the relationship between AppInstaller, Winget, and why they might have different versions?
Sure, you bet. That's a great question. So, AppInstaller has been around for quite a while. It was originally built so you could sideload the installation of MSIX packages. And since that was part of that tooling, we decided just to add Winget to AppInstaller. And version numbers really matter. If you look at semantic versioning, there's a lot of information conveyed. The first number is a major version, and that has a lot to do with compatibility. So we didn't really want to bump AppInstaller up to version 2. And on the minor version side, you're usually dealing with feature sets, and AppInstaller had quite a few features out there. So when we started going out with Winget, we just started it at version 1, and we've kept the minor versions in sync between the two as they added new functionality. The last number is just kind of a bug fix, but we didn't want to artificially bump Winget or AppInstaller up to version 2. We want to be very intentional when we do that. Right now, they both happen to be in sync for the second digit and the third digit when you're looking at the version number. But over time, if we make some breaking changes or something like that, you might see those things depart. But that's the main reason why they're not the same today.
Great. I can imagine that there's a lot of quirks like that across any product, and it's really great to have that insight. There was another set of questions that came out of the episode on contributing to Windows Package Manager, and they were all focused around what really happens after a new package or a new version of a package is submitted. So I'm going to bring up the validation pipeline here on my screen, and anyone who contributes should be able to see this validation pipeline. And we've got a couple steps that you can see here, around making sure the pull request is valid, doing some installer validation to make sure that it installs correctly. It's not entirely clear what other validations happen as part of this. So how do you make sure, as part of all these validation steps, that packages submitted by the community aren't malware and they come from reputable sources?
Yeah, so there's actually a lot going on there, and it's very critical. Anytime we talk about malware, or you might hear the term PUA for potentially unwanted applications, could be bundleware, spyware, something like that. There's a lot of different concerns, and we do that as a defense in depth type of a strategy. So when a PR is made in the Winget packages repository, first thing that we're going to do is make sure that the syntax looks valid for the Winget manifest. Then we're going to start going through and looking at all of the metadata that we've got. We have several checks. So things like any of the URLs that are present, whether they point to the installer or whether it's just a web page or some information about the publisher, the package, or the copyright, we're going to run that through Smart Screen and do reputation checks on it. And we're expecting that to pass. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work with our internal partners to do some AV scanning and detection. We'll take the binary that is the installer, and we'll pass that and the hash along to do static analysis, just to make sure there's not any known malicious software present. And if that passes, then we go on to kind of the interactive mode of validation, where we actually will download the installer and we'll run it in a hardened environment. We'll have Defender and a few other things that are running, File Watcher, things like that. We want to make sure that there's not any malicious code that gets unpacked, extracted, or downloaded as a part of the install process. Then when the install process is completed, we'll actually attempt to run the application to make sure that nothing is happening at runtime. And as long as all of those things pass, we'll follow up with some other policy checks, just looking for risky keywords or inappropriate language or trademarks or things that somebody might be unhappy about. We've got some policies to check all of that. And then the very last step, it'll go back to the community repository after all of our automated detections have completed for a moderator to do sort of a final human validation, make sure the description makes sense, that all of the URLs seem to be appropriate. We'll do some extra logic to make sure the URLs are coming from the same place. There are cases where they don't match, and we've got a system to add waivers for that so that we don't have to do manual validations in the future. But all in all, there's actually quite a bit that's going on under the hood to try to make sure that the software is free of any malware, that the install isn't doing anything potentially unwanted, and that the metadata looks good.
Now, I see here that, I pulled up one of the pull requests and saw the pipelines through a hash mismatch. Are hashes part of that security process?
They are. So on the Winget side, since the URLs are coming from the manifest to download the installer, we don't necessarily control when the publisher makes a change. We tend to call a group of these as vanity URLs, and you'll see, plenty of popular software sites have a static URL that always downloads the latest version of their program. So when we run validations, we're looking at the hash of the installer. And if that changes from the time a user goes to run the install and they're hitting possibly an older manifest, or we just haven't been updated yet, Winget will actually throw an error and it will stop and it will say, hey, the hash doesn't match. That's just an extra protection that we put in place to make sure that nobody's making any changes or switching anything without us having the information to deal with it.
That's great. It sounds like you guys are taking a lot of extra precautions above and beyond what I've seen from other package managers in the field.
Yeah, it's actually been quite a bit of work, and it's one of those things that I would say a lot of that is kind of behind the scenes. And we've got a lot of engineers that really spend a lot of time and a lot of thought working with our internal security folks and other teams to make sure that we're building as safe a product as we can and that we're detecting whenever anything changes on us.
That's great. So the last question I have is really continuing along the theme of the behind the scenes here. In the past couple weeks and months, we've seen that the implementation for handling installers inside zipped folders has been added to Winget, and that's greatly increased the number of portable packages that have been included in the community repository. And I've seen quite a few discussions on GitHub around, what is actually happening with these portable applications. There's points around the path environment variable and something called path cramming. And it's a bit confusing, I think, sometimes to users who are new to Winget. What's really going on here? How does Winget handle, those quote unquote installing of a portable application?
Yeah, so we were really excited to roll this feature out. There's a lot of useful software out there that is just essentially a loose executable file. You can think of something like NuGet as a great example of one of these. And what we ended up doing, we wanted to be able to do the updates and to install specific versions and have Winget be able to reason about them. So when you install a portable application with Winget, we're actually writing some registry entries so that it shows up in add or remove programs and we know what version that package is. And one of the pieces of technology that we're using is a symbolic link. And the hope is that we have a single directory that is added to your path. That way, when you type a command, it'll search all of those paths on your system and it'll be able to run them. With portable applications, it's a little bit tricky though. The default state for the Windows desktop for a user without developer mode enabled doesn't allow us to do those symbolic links. And that's where that path cramming can come in, where we actually need to add the path location for every portable package to the path. But if the user does the install as administrator, or if they have developer mode enabled on Windows, which is pretty common for developers using the package manager, then we are able to essentially add a symbolic link into a directory that Winget already knows about. And that allows us not to necessarily sort of cram a bunch of extra stuff in the path. Unfortunately, when that path gets to be a little bit longer than 2,000 characters, it will hit a hard limit and it will fail. So we're still looking to make improvements in there, but that's really where most of the confusion lies. I think the other thing that happens is people will install something and then they'll think that they can just immediately run it. And in most cases, without the path and the symbolic link, that's not going to work because you actually need to completely close your terminal, whether that's Windows Terminal or command.exe. In order to get a path refresh, you have to do that. So some users will experience having to close their window completely down and reopen it to be able to use those applications. And in some cases, with developer mode enabled, if you already have that path, in those cases, it will just run.
Well, that's some great information, and it's absolutely exciting to hear that, there's some easy workarounds. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea to go in and do a workaround, but at least, it's a very functional solution. And I can say I've used it myself and it's absolutely great.
Yeah, that's what we love to hear. And, we're definitely open to feedback and we're continuing to make improvements in the product. So it is very important for people to engage with us at GitHub and let us know if they're encountering problems or any of that. I think we've also been recently adding some frequently asked questions. I think some of this content would be great additions in there as well.
That's a great point. I can certainly take a look at that. We'll make sure we get the documentation updated over at GitHub. And, I just want to say, thank you for taking the time to answer these frequently asked questions and for having me back to ask them.
You bet. It's my pleasure. And I think in a lot of cases, the community would rather hear from you than me.
I'm not certain about that. You're always the voice in the room, and we love hearing from everyone on the Winget side.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.